Hello, welcome back to another Thrive Thursday with Leap for Ladies. Today we have the lovely DeDe Jacques, who is a bookkeeper and tax preparer. She's been working in this industry for 30 years and running her own business for the last 4 or 5 years. And today she's going to be telling us all about year-end bookkeeping. So, welcome. I'll let you take the floor, DeDe.
Thank you, Whitney. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay. So right now is the time to be getting your year-end books together. And I know not everybody has a bookkeeper, so this is a presentation that I came up with to help people that don't have bookkeepers that are just going to do all the work for them. So why this matters. So it's your business's health check. So it's just like having an annual physical with your doctor. You also need to have a business health check. It also helps you to maximize your deductions because you know where all the money went. And then it helps you to avoid stress, especially if you do it in January, because then by the time for taxes come, then you have everything already put together. So I have 5 simple steps to help you prep your books. So first is to get organized now. Just go ahead and get your receipts, your invoices, bank statements, whatever it is that you have. The IRS does, in the case of an audit, accept digital receipts. So once you scan them in and you feel they're safe on your computer, you can go ahead and shred them, which is always my recommendation because they're probably going to fade anyway. And they also just take up a lot of space that is not needed. Digital is perfectly acceptable, and it's actually a lot easier in the case of most audits because a lot of audits are not handled, like the IRS agent doesn't physically come to your house most of the time, at least to get started with it.
Hey Dee Dee,
Um,
if we're going to scan documents in or scan our receipts in, how long do we need to keep those scans? Or is it a good idea to keep the physical copies for a year or and then
when you scan
destroy
them
them?
in, you do not need the physical copies. So
Okay,
that's what I was
okay,
saying is go ahead and shred them
okay,
because the IRS accepts digital receipts. So you don't need physical copies once they're scanned in.
okay. And then how long do you need to keep those digital copies of your receipts? Forever? Or
Um,
is there a
7
certain?
is usually the maximum. It actually does vary based on your type of business and
Okay,
what they were used for. So that would just be a little more complex answer, but 7 would be the longest, 7
okay,
years.
okay, great. Thank you. And is it
Yeah,
okay if I interrupt and ask questions? I'm probably going to have a
sure.
lot of questions. So, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Okay, so
thanks.
then number 2, reconcile your accounts. Match your books to your bank statements. So if you do have a bookkeeping software like Xero or QuickBooks, then you really do need to reconcile. Otherwise, so for me doing taxes, when I get a profit and loss and balance sheet from a client, I do ask for their year-end bank and credit card statements that include the last day of last year, and I match that to their balance sheet. If they don't have a balance sheet and they just have maybe like a spreadsheet with their income expenses, I still ask for those statements to create a balance sheet for their business. But it's really good to go ahead and match things. And then that way you know that there weren't double payments to something or missed deposits, just situations like that. Also, to review your expenses. If you bought office supplies or a new chair for your home office, which home office is a really good thing to be able to deduct. And if you're sole proprietor, there are a couple ways to do that. You can either track all of your expenses for your home and take a portion based on your square footage, or you can do what's called the simple method, which basically gives you $5 a square foot. You do want to make sure that all the square footage that you're claiming, though, is 100% business. So if you split it with 2 different businesses, or say you have a business and a rental, then you actually want to cut that in half because it's not dedicated for your office, but it could be 50% dedicated to your business. You just kind of want to be on the up and up with that in case the IRS does come back and question anything. If you have an S corporation, then home office is claimed a little bit differently in the sense that your business technically pays rent to you as a person, and then you as a person receive the rent. That's a little bit more complex. So if you do have an S corp, it is good to talk to your tax preparer to get them involved in the best way to handle that. And if you didn't track your expenses through the year, especially as well for some of the big things, then you can go through your statements and a lot of times have all of the different expenses there. It is really good to have the receipts and to get those scanned in, though. I do want to go back quickly about the receipts. Meals are especially super important for you to have physical and then scan them in instead of just going by a credit card statement. And on each of your meal receipts, write down what it was for. So the meals that are actually deductible are meals with a client, a vendor, or a prospect, or overnight business travel. So for me, I live in Chandler, Arizona. If I go to an all-day conference in Phoenix and I buy lunch while I'm there, it's not expensible. If I go to DC for a conference, I'm going to be staying overnight. I can count my meals as deductible. Okay, 4, prepare your income statement. So this shows your business's performance with revenue, costs, and your profit. This is, it's also called your profit and loss statement or your P&L. And this gives kind of a bottom line, but we can't say you got income and you had expenses, and so here's your net profit. We need to have your expenses at least itemized out to some degree. And this is what you're going to prepare after you have all of those expenses together from your statements and your receipts. And then you can check for last minute deductions. It is too late to do year-end purchases for last year, but that's something you can be thinking forward for the end of this year. But you still can consult with an accountant or tax preparer to see if you're missing anything, because there could be something that you purchased that you just totally forgot about based on some questions that your tax preparer could be asking you. So some quick tips to stay on track. You can use software. QuickBooks Online and Xero are 2 really great ones. I like Xero because it has a page to categorize that's called cash coding, and it really looks like a spreadsheet. You can you can type meals and hit enter, and it'll go right to the next line, and you can just keep going down the list instead of having to click drop down boxes and okay and accept and all that and go through the page. It actually is very user friendly whenever you get onto that page. You can also get one of the levels of software cheaper usually if you're going through a bookkeeper who is partnered with Xero. And it's only offered through partner programs, so therefore you can't get that level of the software on your own. You would have to pay more if you wanted to use Xero without going through a bookkeeper. One thing that I do offer is that I offer some clients just subscription only. So they want that cheaper level of plan, but they don't need me to do their books yet. So then they just pay me for the subscription every month. It does also help you to track month by month. It's a lot easier to do your books monthly at the very least instead of doing them yearly, because in December you can forget what you did last January. And it also helps you to be prepared early so that everything is all up to date whenever it's time for taxes. These are some things not to forget about. Payroll. If you have employees, then double check your payroll records. This is one thing a lot of people get entered into their expenses wrong, because when you are doing payroll, which first of all, payroll is only actual W-2 employees. If you're paying somebody through a 1099, that's going to be considered a contractor and not an employee. When you're doing payroll, though, you usually see 2 expenses come through your bank account. One is actually their net pay, which is what their paycheck says. The other one is the gross taxes, which means their taxes and your taxes. But the way it gets entered into your books needs to be their gross pay as the payroll and your tax portion as the taxes. So that's something that a lot of times can get confusing for clients, even if they're using a software, because depending on if it's integrated with the payroll processor, it may not have the connection made right so that everything gets entered nicely. There are also big business assets. So big ticket items, I usually say over $2,500, then those are considered assets and you're actually going to depreciate them instead of take the whole item as an expense. That helps you in future years when you may have lower expenses. You still have the depreciation that will help come against your books. And then payments. So review any quarterly taxes you've paid. There are payroll quarterly payments, but then there's also estimated payments people make, which those usually are going through your personal expense. So they're not an expense to the business, but when you do taxes, you want to make sure that those are put into the tax software so that the IRS does know you've already paid some of your taxes that ahead of time.
I have a question about business assets. So are those
Yes.
actual tangible items typically? So it wouldn't be like a software or a license or something like that, or the Leap community, right? Is an asset.
Well,
But
first of all, it's going to be over $2,500.
okay.
So I don't think anyone's paying 2,500 for the LEAP community.
Right,
But
right.
it can be intangible items, but again, it's going to be over $2,500 and it's not going to be renewable. So I may pay $3,000 for my tax software, but I'm
Mhm.
having to pay that every year. So that's not going to
Okay.
be an asset for me. That is going to be a direct expense because otherwise
It's an
I'm
annual
going to
thing.
be depreciating out multiple years at the same time. But um, if you have some big web development software or something, that does cost a lot, but it's kind of a one-time purchase, maybe with some upgrades later, then you can still go ahead and depreciate those out.
Okay.
And it's usually easy enough to find out the depreciation years. A lot of things depreciate out over 5 years, but really you just have to Google depreciation, what the item is, how many years, it'll come up.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so review and submit. So you're going to double check everything and then file. So if you're doing the taxes yourself, just make sure that you go over everything with a fine-tooth comb. If you are using a tax professional, look over your tax return before you sign the e-file pages. So I usually recommend that people look over the tax returns that I send them because I am not responsible for the accuracy as far as except for to accurately enter what you gave me. But if you look over it, you could realize that you forgot something. Last year, I had a friend that forgot some of their college education that they had paid for their child. The only way that I caught it is that I know them and I knew that they had not submitted, and I knew where their daughter was going to school. So then I caught that they had not sent me that information. If I didn't know them, I never would have known that they had more college education to claim against their expenses. So it's really good to be looking over that yourself. Because if you don't give your tax preparer everything, they're not responsible beyond that. And then celebrate your success. So if you've prepped like a pro and now tax season is going to be easy, then take a deep breath and enjoy the satisfaction of a job well done. And that's it. So then are there any other questions?
What are
Hmm.
what are some of the, thank you for that presentation, Dee Dee. It was
Yeah,
great.
thank you.
Yeah. What are some of the things that most business owners, I know some of the questions I get as a business coach are, you know, how do I know if I'm set up as an S Corp or a C Corp? I've had a couple of people ask me that, and it's like, okay, I refer them back to the Secretary of State, but is that the right place? Do they find that information there?
So that, so as far as an S corp goes, that is
Mhm.
IRS.
Okay.
That is, you are electing to file your taxes as a small corporation. That is not on the state level.
Okay.
Although when you file your taxes, you are filing a different return for your state.
Hmm.
As far as LLCs go, Colorado, that's Secretary of State, but in Arizona, it's the Arizona Corporation Commission. We
Okay.
don't go through the Secretary of State except if we're going to do a DBA or a trade name. So that varies by state as
By
well.
state. Okay.
As far as a C Corp, I know in Arizona, if when you go to set up your LLC, if instead of LLC you put INC at the end, then when you get your tax identification number for your business from the IRS says you are a C corporation and you have to file as a corporation. Most people don't want to do that because there's double taxation
Hmm.
and you have to treat it as its own separate person. It is not your arm or an extension of you. It is its own separate thing.
Hmm. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Um, the other thing is, it's January when we're recording this, so anybody might be watching it later in the year, but it's January now, and so we're in 1099 season, right? So, what are some of the
Yes.
most common questions you get about 1099s from business owners, and especially those that might be doing it themselves?
Um, I don't get a lot of questions of people doing the 1099s themselves. I will get people that do the books themselves and then want me to file the 1099s. There
Okay.
are some inexpensive filing softwares that you can
Mhm.
search for that anybody can use. Really, a lot of people don't realize that you actually need to file a 1099 for anybody you pay $600 or more in the year. Then they also don't realize they need to have them fill out a W-9. I
Mhm.
always say the W-9 leads to the 1099. So, and my biggest recommendation with that, so I'm glad that you brought this up, Mary, is as before you even pay a person, even if you think they're just going to do one little job and make $100, get them to fill out a W-9. Because I just don't personally, as a person, not a tax person, but as a person, I don't think it's fair the next January to say, hey, I need you to fill out this tax document so I can tell the IRS how much I paid you.
Mhm.
They could have thought that they weren't going to be paid above the table, even though you thought that the whole time. Okay, so
Yeah.
just be fair to both of you and have your end covered by having them fill out the W-9 before you pay them. Some people say, well, I have to hunt them down to get them to fill it out. Well, if you don't pay them until they fill it out, they will fill it out.
Yeah. If they want their money, they'll fill it out. Yes.
Exactly.
Good. And so another question is, so if somebody's running all their business through PayPal and PayPal says this is how much income we've had, and then you get all of these W-9s or 1099s from those same people that said, oh, I paid you this much, but they paid you through PayPal, then there can be duplicates there, right? So that's something that I learned the hard way a couple of years ago. I was like, wait, I've got all this extra income. Where's it coming from? And then it's like, oh, that's because I got W-9s showing they paid me, and then I've got PayPal 1099 NEC or whatever they send you.
So PayPal sends a 1099K.
Okay.
Yes. So, and that is going to be getting tighter. Okay.
Okay.
So, I believe that previously the merchant software, so PayPal and those Stripe, did not have to file a 1099K unless it was over $25,000. This year it is $5,000, and I believe either next year or the following it will be $600.
Hmm.
So you will
Okay.
be seeing a lot more 1099Ks if you receive credit card payments or PayPal payments. Those are just stating you received that through digital funding,
Mhm.
so instead of actual cash or check. That's all of that's stating. So yes, you do want to make sure it doesn't overlap with a 1099 that a client could be giving you because they paid you a lot of money. Most of the time it's going to, you could write it as an expense. Well, you would just take it off of your total
Right.
just to make sure that none of it's double claimed.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was just something that happened to me. So I was
Yes.
like, let's talk
And
about
it's
that.
going to be getting a lot trickier now that
Yeah.
more people are going to be receiving them.
Right. Yeah. Good. Good. All right. Do you have some other questions, Whitney? I hate to monopolize all the question time here.
No, no.
Yeah. I think it's so important for people to know their numbers. And so that's why I loved when you talked about, if you can reconcile your books every month,
Mhm.
because the better data we have, the better decisions we can make for our business, right?
Yes.
And so really having that reconciled. And I love that you are able to work with clients of different ranges and different needs, right? So if they need you
Mhm.
to do everything from all the reconciliation and the books and tax prep and all that kind of stuff, that's great. But if they just need somebody to give them a lower price discount a discounted subscription, that's a nice option too. And then you're there kind of as a backup if you need to help somebody, you can help them. So, what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That, and just on that topic, so then I'm ready that if your business has grown, I already have access to your books.
Hmm.
Or some of those clients just want me to do a book review for them every 3 months or right before tax season. So I really tailor my services based on who I'm working with and what their needs are. I try not to oversell anything. And I also do help with business structure. I do payroll. So I kind of do all the things,
Hmm.
but I'm really big into not overselling. I say I'm like the mechanic that tells you, no, you don't have to get this part fixed right now. Because to me, you're going to trust them to come back later whenever you do need that part
Right.
fixed. So
Yeah.
I try to do that the same with bookkeeping, that just let you know what I suggest and let you take care, you decide because they are your books and you are the owner of them and you're the one ultimately responsible for them, not me anyway.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that. So, when you work with a client to do their books, what kind of report do they get back from you so that they kind of understand what's happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. So each month they'll get a balance sheet and a profit and loss. That lets them know their bottom line, especially so that if they're working with a business coach, then their business coach kind of knows where they are.
Hmm.
Because I can imagine that that feeds into your business quite well, Mary,
It does. Yeah.
that if people don't know where they are in their numbers, it's really hard for you to help them grow because you don't know where they're starting.
Hmm.
But they always get a balance sheet and a profit and loss. And then they also have access to a meeting with me if they want to go over it with any questions, just things like that. But those are what they get every month, as long as they've answered the questions that we have regarding categorization, because sometimes um, a place could be supplies or it could be food.
Hmm.
It could kind of vary as to what's being purchased at a place. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And then what's the best time to start working with you if you've got a business that's maybe either just starting up and or they've been in business for a few years and maybe haven't really done a lot with their books. They've kind of just looked at their bank statement as their books and see if they have money left at the end of the month, right? So what's the best time for them to start working with you?
Well, it kind of reminds me of that Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second
Yes.
best time is now.
Yeah.
So if you don't start with me or another bookkeeper when you start your business, then the next best time is now. So,
Hmm.
and January is a really good time because I just had a new client prospect come to me yesterday, started January of 24, has done nothing with bookkeeping. So I'm going to go into he's going to give me accountant access, only bank access, which means I can look at his bank. I can't move any money. I'm going to go in and look, kind of see how many transactions he does on average and give him a quote to do all of his 24 at once, and then give him a quote to do 2025 each going forward monthly. So now really is the second best time because a lot of times I can just go in and do all of 24 at one time, which I can then discount because I'm not giving you monthly statements. I'm giving you an annual statement.
Right.
Sometimes I can reconcile several months at the same time. Like, so sometimes it saves me time. That
Hmm.
being said, I do tell people that I meet with mid-year that when they've asked, well, what if I come back to you at the end of the year? Then my prices sometimes get a little bit higher because they did put it off. So it
Hmm.
really kind of varies as to where your business is, but it's always good to just go ahead and get somebody to look at your books when you're very first getting started.
Hmm.
Even if you don't need them, sometimes you can pay $100 to $200 just to have them help you set them up properly or to give you a look over. And I do training as well. So I have some people that I train them in QuickBooks and they'll just schedule for me when they have questions and they need some more training. But they're still at the point of doing them themselves.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
yeah, so definitely now is the best time because starting next month, then a lot of bookkeepers get slammed with tax prep.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you? We'll put that in our contact information when we share this out, but just if somebody's listening to this while they're driving or something like that, then what's the best way to get in touch with you, DeDe?
So my website is accountondede.com,
Mhm.
and I have a contact us form. I have a couple of links so they can schedule a meeting with me directly on there. So that's really the best way is through my website.
Okay, accountondede.com.
Yes.
Nice. Love it. Love it. That's all my questions.
And I can't just quickly, because Whitney and I were just talking about this for taxes, I can do tax prep in other states. So it depends on the state as to what I'm allowed to offer. Like in New York, I do have like I guess a permit number or something. I'm allowed to do up to 10 returns. If I want to do more than 10 returns, then I have to get a different certification. But I
Okay,
am allowed to be able to do that. And with a lot of states, then I'm allowed to do some tax returns. And I get people that move and have multiple states. That's not a problem at all.
great. That's good to know. Good to know.
All right. Well, thank you so much, DeDe, for all this information. I will definitely be in touch.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah,
I was
thanks,
going
DeDe.
to
That was
end
a
the
great
recording, but
presentation.
I don't think I can.